Now, Nick Clegg has faced claims of hypocrisy after launching a new strategy to help people from poorer backgrounds achieve the same as those from more privileged homes. The Deputy Prime Minister wants an end to internships that are chosen on connections rather than ability. But it was later revealed that he won an internship at a bank through a family friend and employed an intern at Whitehall without paying them.
I'm not the slightest bit ashamed of saying that I think that we all inhabited a system which was wrong, and that's why I was gobsmacked, frankly, when I came to government and found that in Whitehall, the taxpayer-funded Whitehall system, you had informal internships, and that's why we're putting an end to it, which we've announced today.
Well, in the Commons today, Labour was quick to criticise the policy.
I'm afraid the Deputy Prime Minister gave up the right to pontificate on social mobility when he abolished educational maintenance allowances, trebled tuition fees and betrayed a generation for young people. Mr Speaker, when I heard the Deputy Prime Minister was going to launch a commission on social mobility, I thought it was April Fool's Day. In just 10 months, this Tory-led government has launched an assault on the opportunities for young people, especially the poorest.
James Mills from the Save the EMA campaign joins us now from Westminster. What do you make of these social mobility proposals?
Well, the aim is obviously quite amiable, to get more people, you know, from poorer backgrounds into access to higher education and also into internships. And I don't want to see access to either higher education for the few anymore. I don't want to see access to further education for the few. But the real problem is I don't think Nick Clegg sees the wood for the trees on this issue. Before people can actually enter into doing internships, as you'll probably know, and many of your viewers will know, anyone who's interning for Sky will know, the bare minimum requirement they'll have educationally is to pass their Key Stage 5 or their A-levels, and that's undermined right now for the poorest in our country by scrapping EMA. And the same for higher education. You've got to go through further education before you can even get there. So, I mean, it's an admirable aim, but he undermines himself by scrapping EMA. When you bear in mind that 80% or 4 out of 5 or people on EMA, young people on EMA, come from household incomes below £21,000 a year. These are the people he wants to get into higher education. And also bear in mind that for 90% of kids on free school meals go on to receive EMA. The exact group of people that Nick Clegg wants to get, you know, socially mobile, but unfortunately I feel he's undermining it, and if anything it's rather hypocritical and definitely an empty sentiment.
Well, the government has replaced or offered to replace some of those people who might otherwise have received EMA with the new bursary scheme. I know it's not funded to the same degree and the numbers are not identical, so that's in place. If you then have used that bursary to get some good A-levels, shouldn't you have at least a level playing field as to where you go and get a year-out experience?
I think you've answered that question yourself. I mean, the aim is obviously admirable, but as you said, only some are going to get it. They're cutting the EMA or the funding for the EMA replacement by 2/3. It's 2/3 less than what the EMA was. And also, bear in mind that they say they're giving more money to poor students than not actually. The IFS has actually said they're actually going to be giving kids, especially those on free school meals, £370 a year less money. So, I mean, it's quite disingenuous what the government are saying on the EMA issue alone. Hence why they're getting such an uproar on it. And it's quite, you know, YouGov polls have said that the public are against it. Leading economists have spoke out against it. And also the weight of evidence is against scrapping EMA, because that's actually a scheme that actually helps social mobility. It gets the very poorest percentile in our country into education. And at a time when we've got gold-plated subsidy for the private schools in this country, that's very similar to what the funding for EMA is. And we're not looking at that. The 600,000 of some of the wealthiest peoples in our country in the independent sector, like Nick Clegg and like David Cameron were, who won't have to worry about how they get to class. We are undermining the poorest 600,000 teenagers in our country who would just like to get an education, not have to worry about how to get to class.
You say undermining, but we don't quite know that yet, do we? Because although you believe, obviously, from your campaign point of view, that EMA is vital, if it is withdrawn from some people, if the argument is strong enough that somehow their family has to help them through sixth form, then surely many people will do that. They'll see it as an aspiration that's worth going for.
Look, with the aspiration's there, but if the funding's not there to help that aspiration, as I said, imagine Sky News, imagine if your programme lost 2/3 of its funding, would it perform as well? I don't think so. Would as many young people get through? The aim is fine, but only if you support that aim with the financial incentive it needs. Now, according to the UCU, only in February, 70% of the kids that are on EMA, without that funding, wouldn't be able to take part in their courses. 40% only applied for the courses, for 2-year courses, on the basis of EMA support. So, in essence, you're going to reduce the number of people who are socially mobile. well. So you can open access, but you're only opening access for a very limited amount of people, while at the same time allowing that some of the most wealthier and people who will find Advantage a lot easier, and not actually even looking at how you're going to, curb their influence, and how that sort of dichotomy, if you like, where the richest students with the most access to these things, like Nick Clegg had when he was a student, can access the system. You're not going to touch them, but you are going to take money from the poorest. I mean, so you're going to limit the very few, even fewer people will get even less money. I mean, it's quite ludicrous, really. I mean, it's pretty disingenuous, and I think quite hypocritical.
James Mills from the Save the EMA campaign. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
The police officer who knocked Ian Tomlinson to the ground has apologised for any way he may have been responsible for his death. At Mr Tomlinson's inquest today, PC Simon Hardwood admitted that the newspaper seller had been no threat to him when the officer pushed him during the G20 protest 2 years ago. Sky's Mark White has been following the inquest.
It was here on this street that PC Simon Harwood had his confrontation with Ian Tomlinson. He said he was coming down this street with a group of other officers and he could see the newspaper vendor interacting with another group of policemen further down the street. He said that Ian Tomlinson appeared to be encroaching on the police lines and that despite being bitten on the ankle by a police dog, he didn't budge. That's when PC Simon Harwood said